So now we get to the P we call place. That's the part of the marketing mix where we focus on how we get the product into the hands of the target market that we've identified and we've been communicating with via promotion. So there's two big aspects to the place component. One is distribution, moving the product to the place where our customers can find it. And the other one is retail, the location where the end user can acquire the product. Maybe that's a store, maybe that's a website. Channels, which are consisting of two or more players, often can accomplish certain distribution functions more effectively and more efficiently than can a single organization. So there's three functions of what we call distribution channels. Channels make the desired products available when, we call that time utility, where or place utility, and in the sizes and quantities that customers desire. We refer to that as ownership utility. Distribution channels provide a number of logistics or physical distribution functions that increase the efficiency of the flow of goods from the producer to the consumer. Now similarly, distribution channels create efficiencies because they reduce the number of transactions that are necessary for goods to flow from many different manufacturers to large numbers of customers. This is one of the biggest advantages of distribution channels to the manufacturer or the producer. Imagine a world in which there were no grocery stores. How would people acquire their dairy, their bread, and their produce products? You would have to get milk directly from the dairy, bread from a bakery, and tomatoes and corn from a local farmer. So it provides a lot of advantages to us as consumers. Now, there are a couple of types of distribution channels and also wholesale intermediaries that we want to talk about. Physical distribution is the process of getting the products from point A to B. What we call a channel of distribution is a set of partners that work together to do the work of the physical distribution. A channel of distribution consists of, at a minimum, a producer, which would be a manufacturer or the creator of a product or service, and a customer. That's the simplest approach to distribution. We talk about that as a direct channel. An indirect channel contains one or more channel intermediaries who facilitate the movement of goods between the producer and the consumer or end user. Agents, wholesalers, distributors, and retailers are all examples of what we call channel intermediaries. Now, there's three key functions of distribution channels, and you'll want to make sure you understand this. Should be pretty intuitive to you as you think about it. One of these is what we call breaking bulk. This is the situation where it allows you to basically go to the store and buy one roll or two rolls of paper towels instead of having to buy a box of 48 or a truckload of 1,000. This is what the intermediary does. They break these down into more usable quantities and then distribute them out ultimately to you as a consumer. And then the next thing they do is what we call creating an assortment. And this allows you to go to one grocery store for meat, for bread, for milk, for vegetables, rather than having to go to a meat market, a milk store, and a vegetable stand. They create an assortment of things that we're interested in. And then transportation and storage, moving the goods from the producer to locations such as a warehouse where they hold them until a store needs a particular product in a particular quantity. Now there's some other functions that we'll discuss in class that are real important as well. Now think a minute about how complicated the world would be if you tried to buy all of your products direct. On the left you see what the world would look like without intermediaries. And so basically whenever Susan needed to buy all these things, there'd be all these different transactions that would go directly to the manufacturer of that product. On the right, notice how a retail channel member like Walmart helps by providing the assortment of products that customers can buy all in the same location. And so that reduces the number of consumer transactions that are necessary, and it reduces the cost of obtaining the product. And note on this visual that Walmart, the intermediary, sits in the middle between the producer and the customer, hence the idea of the name intermediary. Now, this is just a summary slide that we'll look at, and then we'll go into this in some detail. There's different kinds of intermediaries that we have. Independent intermediaries do business with many different manufacturers and many different customer firms, and so they help the flow of goods throughout the process. Manufacturer-owned intermediaries are completely separate business units that perform all the functions of independent intermediaries while still maintaining complete control over the channel. Wholesaling intermediaries are firms that handle the flow of products from the manufacturer to the retailer or to the business user. And so there's several types of wholesalers. Basically two big categories, full service and limited service. So full service merchant wholesalers provide delivery, credit, repairs, advertising, market research, and more to their customers, and often they have their own sales force. General merchandise wholesalers, such as food wholesalers, carry a wide variety of different items, whereas specialty wholesalers might be something like a candy wholesaler. They carry a deep assortment of items within a specific product line. So you'll have full-service merchant wholesalers who provide certain kind of benefits, and then general merchandise wholesalers. Now we have what we call merchant wholesalers as well. These limited service merchant wholesalers provide fewer services for their customers. It's important to note that they don't take title. They never actually own the merchandise, and they're less likely to provide delivery, credit, or marketing kinds of assistance. And let's look at some of these types. One you'll hear called cash and carry. They provide low-cost merchandise for retailers, for industrial customers that are too small for the wholesalers' sales reps to call upon. And so often you'll see things like groceries and office supplies done this way. Truck jobbers carry their products to small business customer locations for their inspection and selection, and so they'll actually have them on their truck. I can't think of the name of the company, but you may have seen the company that does this with tools, and they'll go, for example, to a mechanic, an auto mechanic shop, and they'll have all their tools, and you can actually buy them off of the truck. What we call drop shippers are limited function wholesalers that take ownership to the merchandise, but they never actually take possession of it. Now that's kind of an interesting idea, and we'll discuss more about how that happens in class. Don't miss this term that I'm using called take title. It means that they legally own the merchandise for a period of time. So they would buy it from the manufacturer and then sell it to the retailer. Some of these kind of wholesalers do take title, some don't. Drop shippers take orders from and they bill retailers and industrial buyers, but they ship the merchandise directly from the manufacturer. And so they do take title and they do assume certain risk, but they never actually touch the merchandise. So in that way, there's sort of a go-between where they just sort of bring together the buyer and the seller. Mail order wholesalers sell products to small retailers and other industrial customers, and they're often located in remote areas, and they sometimes do this through catalogs, either paper or online kinds of catalogs. Rack jobbers is another interesting term, and rack jobbers are those that will go and actually stock racks inside of stores. You'll frequently see this with magazines, for example, and these are the people in a grocery store. You see that they're doing that, and they never know where anything else is because they don't work for the grocery store. They just are responsible for keeping an inventory on those racks. Now, merchandise agents are a second major type of independent intermediary. They provide service in exchange for commissions. They may or may not take possession of the product, but they never actually take ownership or take title. So let's look at some of the types of these. Manufacturer reps, sometimes they're called manufacturer's agents, are independent salespeople who carry several lines of non-competing products. They receive commissions based on a percentage of what they sell, and they represent the buyer or the seller usually on an ongoing basis. So to the end customer, they may look like a salesman of the company, but in fact they're independent. And so they may be working as a salesperson for several different companies. Now, selling agents market a whole product line or one manufacturer's total output. They're often seen as independent marketing departments effectively. They control the pricing, the promotion, the distribution of their products, and they're found in sort of select industries such as furniture, clothing, and textiles. And then we've got this category called commission merchants, and these are sales agents who primarily receive agricultural products. They take possession of the products, but they don't ever take ownership of the products. Usually commission merchants are free to sell the product for the highest price they can get, so they have a lot of control over the pricing component of the marketing mix. Merchandise brokers are intermediaries that facilitate transactions in markets such as real estate, food, and used equipment, in which there are lots of small buyers and sellers. So brokers bring buyers and sellers together in return for a fee when that transaction is completed. That's what a broker does. Now, sometimes manufacturers set up their own channel intermediaries. Then they can have separate business units that perform all the functions of independent intermediaries while at the same time maintaining complete control over the channel. And so they do this in part to have that level of control. Sales branches are manufacturer-owned facilities that kind of like independent wholesalers. They carry the inventory and they provide sales and service to customers in a specific geographic area. Sales offices are manufacturer-owned facilities that, like agents, don't carry the inventory, but they provide selling functions for the manufacturer in a certain geographic area. They allow members of the sales force to locate close to the customers, reducing selling costs and offering better customer service. I used to be part of a sales office when I was working for the NCR Corporation, and we were right in Bentonville, Arkansas, just down the street from Walmart. And so we had salespeople there. We didn't have usually anything to sell in the office, but this is where the salespeople and some of the service people were located. And then we have manufacturer showrooms, and these are owned by the manufacturer. They may be leased facilities in which products are permanently displayed for customers to visit and see. Retailers can either visit during a trade show or all year long at one of these locations to see the manufacturer's merchandise, and they can make a business-to-business kind of purchase. Interestingly, we're seeing this happen in consumer purchasing as well. You might be aware of a famous, soon-to-be famous car company called Tesla that's selling their cars in this way. Now, firms face another number of choices in the structure of their distribution channels. First, we want to kind of look at the idea of channel levels. When we talk about channel level, this refers to the number of distinct categories of intermediaries that populate a channel of distribution. Considerations of which members are available, the size of the market, the frequency of the consumer product purchases are some of the factors that we consider at this point. Now, a direct channel, in that situation, a producer sells directly to the customer, and you'll see that on the first row of this chart here. For example, a craftsman creates a piece of furniture and sells the furniture directly to a family. Also, you might have a manufacturer that sells directly to consumers via their website. When this tactic isn't feasible, retailers, wholesalers, or even sometimes multiple wholesalers may be added to the distribution channel. But each time you add an intermediary into the picture, the final cost to the customer increases because everybody wants their cut. And they should, because they're providing value along the way. So it's critical that each channel member provide additional value. Otherwise, you're going to have a product that's going to be too pricey compared to the competition. Now, distribution decisions interact with the marketing mix, our 4 Ps, in a number of ways. Place decisions obviously can influence prices that are going to be charged to final customers. If you've got a warehouse store, you may have lower costs compared to a boutique store where you have expensive salespeople and a lot of fancy kinds of furnishings, that sort of thing. Higher lease rates. Also, distribution decisions can help develop they can also help position a product in the market. For example, selling a fashion item in an elite retailer will enhance the product's image and thus the positioning. And then the nature of the product actually influences the choice of distribution channel, especially retailers. There are going to be certain kinds of products that are going to need a particular kind of retail establishment. It really needs to all be integrated into the marketing mix. Now, the the third stage is to develop actual channel strategies, and we'll spend some time on these different strategies in class, but right now let's just cover the basics. What we call a conventional marketing system is a multi-level distribution channel in which members work independently of one another. So each of these boxes are independent companies and they're working independently. Their relationships are limited to basically buying and selling from one another. So the wholesaler buys from the producer, and then the wholesaler sells to the retailer. The retailer buys from the wholesaler, and the retailer sells to us as the consumer. Even though they are independent, this process usually works because they're all working toward the same goals: to increase sales, to keep costs low, to provide good customer service. Then we have the vertical marketing system. You'll hear that called a VMS. It's a channel in which there's a formal cooperation among the channel members at two or more different levels. It could be between the manufacturer and the wholesaler. It could be between the wholesaler and the retailer. And so there's some advantages to this in terms of control, but there's some disadvantages in terms of cost, and there are different ways that we create these control mechanisms. Now, another key distribution strategy decision is what we call the level of intensity. And in one case, we may have few retailers or outlets, places to buy the product. In another, we may have many, and we refer to these as being either exclusive on the few end, intensive on the far end, or selective in the middle. And so with exclusive, we've got just a few retailers that often are kind of high-end retailers that are offering the product, and that gives that sense of exclusivity. You can't just buy this jewelry anywhere. Intensive, on the other hand, is where Martha Stewart decides to not just market her products at Macy's, but she's going to market them at Kmart as well, and that's a more intensive strategy. And then, of course, selective is somewhere in between. Now, supply chain is an important piece of the P or distribution part of the marketing mix too. All activities that are necessary to convert raw materials into a good or service and put it in the hands of the consumer or the business customer are what we consider to be in the supply chain. And we get into what we call supply chain management. Very interesting area that some of you that may be more analytically inclined, or you like the idea of movement from things from one place to another and all that organizational process, this could be a great place for you to plug in. Supply chain management involves the coordination of the flows among the firms in a supply chain to maximize total profitability. Now, there are whole courses on supply chain. In fact, at some schools, whole majors in supply chain. And so think about this as an interesting area that you might want to focus on, get more information about, and maybe pursue sometime as a career. Kind of related to this, another key part of distribution is the whole idea of logistics, which is the process of designing, managing, and improving the movement of products through the supply chain. So this involves the physical distribution, the activities that are used to move finished goods from manufacturers to final customers. And so there's 5 key functions of logistics. One is processing the orders, finding out what people need and starting that process moving. And then warehousing, as we've talked about, putting big bulk amounts of product into a storage facility and then dealing it out in smaller groups to usually retailers. Materials handling becomes important. Either at the wholesale warehouse level or at the manufacturer level. Transportation, a very key part of this. What's the most effective way to move the product? And then inventory control. How do we make sure that we have enough inventory so we can fulfill orders quickly, but not so much that we have so much money invested in that? Now, logistics decisions have to take into account different options for transportation. And so we have several factors that we consider when we're deciding how we want to transport those. Dependability refers to the ability of the carrier to deliver goods safely and on time. Cost, of course, refers to the total transportation cost, moving the product from one location to another, including any charges for loading and unloading or in-transit storage that has to take place. Speed of delivery means the total time from the dock of the manufacturer to the next place that it's going, whether it be a warehouse or to the retailer, including unloading and loading and unloading the product. And the accessibility relates to the number of different locations that the carrier serves. Capability refers to a carrier's ability to handle a variety of different products, such as large or small, fragile or bulky kinds of items. And then traceability relates to the ability of the carrier to locate goods in a shipment, either something that gets lost or they're trying to make sure that it is going to the right place. Now, having a clear distribution strategy is a critical factor in a firm's success. Whether you're a small entrepreneurial company or a major corporation, it's likely that there'll be at least one intermediary that's going to be involved in getting your product to your customer, perhaps multiple intermediaries. We'll discuss some of the details, the various types of channel strategies further in class. Be sure and read Chapter 11, take the quiz, and we'll see you in class.